The stars had always been quiet. For thousands of years, humans looked up at the night sky and wondered if they were alone. They built telescopes and sent radio signals into the darkness. They dreamed of meeting other life forms. They imagined friendly aliens who would share knowledge and technology. They were wrong about the friendly part. Admiral Torvik stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Conquest, and watched the small blue planet grow larger on his viewing screen. He had conquered 40 worlds in his career. He had brought 300 star systems under the rule of the Vulcan Empire. This tiny planet called Earth would be his 41st victory. Begin the standard approach, he ordered his officers. Broadcast the surrender demand in all their languages. Torvik was tall, even for a Vulcan, with gray skin and 4 eyes that never blinked. He wore medals on his chest that represented millions of dead enemies. He had never lost a battle. He had never even come close to losing. The Vulcan Empire had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Every species they encountered eventually knelt before them. Some fought for a few days. Some lasted a week. But in the end, they all surrendered when they saw the size of the Armada. Today, 12,000 warships filled the space around Earth. Each ship was larger than a human city. Together, they blocked out the sun and cast a shadow over half the planet. On Earth, it was a normal Tuesday morning when the sky went dark. Captain Park. Doyon was drinking his 3rd cup of coffee on the bridge of the Baekdu, a small Korean defense vessel stationed in orbit. He was a quiet man of 42 years, with gray hair at his temples and calm eyes that had seen many things. His grandmother had survived 2 wars on the Korean peninsula. She had taught him that panic was useless and that courage was simply doing what needed to be done. "Sir," his radar officer said, her voice shaking, "we have contacts. Many contacts." Doyon set down his coffee and looked at the screen. His face showed no emotion, but his heart began to beat faster. The radar was filled with red dots, hundreds of them, thousands of them. More than he could count. "How many?" he asked. 12,000 confirmed warships, sir. More arriving every minute." Doyon nodded slowly. He had trained his whole life for threats from other nations. He had never imagined this. But his grandmother's voice echoed in his mind, asterisk, "When trouble comes, you face it. You do not run. Asterisk, contact Geneva," he said. "Tell them we have visitors. Then contact Seoul, Washington, Beijing, Moscow, and everyone else. This is not a Korean problem. This is a human problem." Across the world, billions of people stepped outside and looked up at the darkened sky. They saw the massive shapes of alien warships hanging above their cities. Some screamed. Some cried. Some fell to their knees and prayed, and some got angry. General Kim Yuna was in a bunker beneath the mountains of Gangwon Province when she received the news. She was 60 years old, with iron-gray hair cut short and eyes like chips of black ice. She had fought in 4 different conflicts across 3 continents. She had buried friends and enemies alike. When her aide showed her the satellite images of the alien fleet, she did not panic. She did not cry. She studied the formations with the same cold focus she had used to plan 100 battles. "They are not spread out for defense," she observed. "They expect no resistance. They think this will be easy." "General," her aide said, "what can we do against 12,000 warships? We have nothing that can fight that." Yuna looked at the young man with something like pity. "We have 8 billion people who do not want to die," she said. "That is not nothing." The alien broadcast came 1 hour after their arrival. Every television, every radio, every phone on Earth played the same message at the same time. The voice was cold and mechanical, translated into every human language. "People of Earth, you have been selected for integration into the Vulcan Empire. You will surrender all weapons. You will submit to our authority. You will serve the Empire. Resistance is not logical. You have 1 solar rotation to comply. This is your only warning." The message ended. Silence fell over the planet. In the bunker, General Yuna watched her staff. Some were pale with fear. Some were crying quietly. But others had a different look in their eyes, a look she recognized from battlefields around the world. It was the look of people who had decided they would rather die than kneel. "Get me the leaders of every nation," Yuna said. "Every single one. Tell them we need to talk. Now." What happened next was something that had never occurred in human history. Within 6 hours, enemies became allies. Nations that had pointed nuclear weapons at each other for decades agreed to share everything. Countries that had fought bitter wars joined hands. The United Nations building in New York became a war room. Presidents, prime ministers, and generals gathered around tables covered with maps and data. They argued yes. They shouted at each other, yes. Old hatreds did not disappear overnight, but when Admiral Torvik's deadline grew closer, they stopped arguing. A vote was held. It was unanimous. Earth would not surrender. Captain Doyen received the news on his small ship, still hanging in orbit beneath the shadow of the alien armada. He smiled for the first time that day. "What are our orders?" his first officer asked. "We fight," Doyen said simply. "We fight with everything we have. And if we die, we make sure they remember us." Across the planet, similar scenes played out. Soldiers checked their weapons. Scientists began studying the alien transmissions. Factory workers started making whatever was needed. Ordinary people volunteered for whatever jobs needed doing. Admiral Torvik watched all of this from his flagship with growing confusion. His intelligence officers brought him reports of military mobilization, of factories working overtime, of civilians training with weapons. "They are not surrendering," one officer said nervously. "They are preparing to fight." "That is not possible," Torvik replied. "They cannot fight us. They do not have the technology. They do not have the numbers. They must know they cannot win. Perhaps they do not care about winning," another officer suggested quietly. Torvik stared at his subordinate for a long moment. The idea was so alien to him that he could not process it. Every species he had conquered understood simple mathematics. When you could not win, you surrendered. That was logical. That was survival. But as he looked down at the blue planet below, he felt something strange in his stomach. It took him a moment to recognize the feeling. He had not felt it in 40 years. It was doubt, and somewhere on Earth, an old woman in Busan lit incense before a small shrine and prayed for her grandson, Captain Park Do-yeon. Then she went to her kitchen, found her largest knife, and waited for the aliens to come. She was not afraid. She had survived 2 wars. She would survive this one too, or she would make them pay for taking her. Admiral Torvik had studied many species before conquering them. He knew their population sizes, their weapon capabilities, their government structures. He had a full file on humanity that his scouts had prepared over several years of observation. The file said humans were weak. They fought among themselves constantly. They had nuclear weapons, but no space fleet. They were divided into nearly 200 different nations that could not agree on anything. They would be easy to conquer. The file was about to become useless. General Kim Yuna stood before a camera in the bunker beneath. Gangwon Province. Her message would be transmitted to the alien fleet on every frequency humanity could broadcast. Her staff had told her to be diplomatic, to ask for negotiations, to buy time. She had ignored them. To the commander of the alien fleet, she said, her voice like steel wrapped in ice, "You have made a mistake. We do not negotiate. We do not surrender. You have 24 hours to leave our system. If you do not leave, we will show you why we have spent our entire history at war with each other. We were practicing. We were getting ready. We did not know what we were getting ready for, but now we do. Leave our world or stay here forever. The choice is yours." The transmission ended. Across the planet, 8 billion people watched or listened. Many of them stood a little taller. Many of them felt something hot and fierce growing in their chests. On the flagship, Admiral Torvik watched the transmission with his officers. When it ended, he laughed. His officers laughed with him, though some of their laughter sounded nervous. "They are brave," Torvik said, still amused. "I will give them that. But bravery is nothing against superior weapons. Begin the invasion as planned. We will teach these humans their place in the galaxy. But while Torvik laughed, something was happening on Earth that he could not see. Lieutenant Choi Tai-ho was a weapons engineer stationed in a research facility in Daigin. He was 35 years old, thin and tired-looking, with glasses that he constantly pushed up his nose. He had spent his career designing better missiles and better defense systems. He had never designed anything to fight aliens. That was about to change. We intercepted their communication signals, Tai-ho told his team. They were gathered around computer screens, working on no sleep and too much coffee. If we can understand how they talk to each other, we can disrupt it. Maybe even listen in. It would take months, one of his colleagues said. We have hours, Tai-ho replied. So we will do months of work in hours. Start. They were not alone. Around the world, scientists did the same thing. They shared data instantly. They skipped normal procedures and safety reviews. There was no time for careful science. There was only time for desperate science. In Germany, a team figured out the energy frequency of Vulcan shields. In Japan, engineers began designing weapons that could penetrate those shields. In America, programmers wrote viruses to attack alien computer systems. In Israel, hackers broke into the Vulcan communication network and began listening. All of this happened in less than 20 hours. Tai-ho had not slept in 36 hours when he finally cracked the alien communication code. His hands were shaking from caffeine and exhaustion, but his eyes were bright with triumph. I have it, he announced to his team. I can hear them. I can hear everything they're saying. What he heard made him smile. The aliens were confused. They did not understand why Earth had not surrendered. They were arguing about what to do. Some wanted to bombard cities from orbit. Others wanted to capture humans alive for study. None of them expected any real resistance. They think we are helpless, Tai-ho told General Yuna over a secure line. They think this will be easy, Good Yuna replied. Let them think that. Surprise enemies make mistakes. What else have you learned? Their shields have a weakness at certain frequencies. If we modify our missiles to match those frequencies, we might be able to hurt their ships. Also, they communicate on specific channels. If we jam those channels during battle, their fleet will have trouble coordinating. How long to make these modifications? A few hours, maybe less if everyone works together. Then everyone works together. Send the data to every military base on the planet. Now, while the scientists worked, the soldiers prepared. Captain Park Do-yan received the new data on his ship and immediately began implementing changes. His crew worked without rest, rewiring systems and modifying weapons. Captain, his first officer said, even with these modifications, we cannot fight 12,000 ships. We have maybe 200 vessels capable of space combat. Then each of us must destroy 60 ships, Do-yan replied calmly. Stop counting our disadvantages. Start thinking about how to hurt them. His grandmother had taught him that too. When you are small and your enemy is large, you do not fight fair. You fight smart. You find the weak spots and you strike them without mercy. On the surface, similar preparations happened in every country. Armies mobilized. Civilians received basic weapons training in parks and stadiums. Factories that had made cars and phones now made guns and explosives. Sergeant Lee Ji-woo stood in a Tokyo parking lot, teaching a group of office workers how to fire a rifle. Most of them had never held a weapon before. Their hands shook. Some were crying. Listen to me, she told them, her voice firm but kind. You are afraid. That is normal. I am afraid too, but fear does not mean you stop fighting. Fear means you fight harder. These aliens think we are weak because we are afraid. We will show them that afraid humans are the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. In a hospital in Seoul, Dr. Han Minji studied blood samples from a dead alien scout that had crashed on Earth months ago. The sample had been kept secret by governments. But now all secrets were being shared. Minji was 63 years old, retired virologist who had spent her career fighting diseases. Now she would create one. Their biology is different from ours, she told her team. Different enough that we can target them specifically. I can make something that kills them but leaves humans untouched. That would be biological warfare, a young assistant said nervously. It is against international law. Minji looked at the young man with tired eyes. International law assumes we are fighting other humans. We are not. And I would rather break a law than watch my grandchildren become slaves. She worked through the night, and by morning she had a prototype. It was a virus that attacked Vulcan nervous systems. It spread through air and water. It killed within hours. This is ready, she told General Yuna. But once we use it, there's no going back. They will hate us forever. They'll already plan to enslave us, Yuna replied. Their hatred is already guaranteed. Use it when needed. Admiral Torvik received reports throughout the day that troubled him. Human communication had increased dramatically. Energy signatures suggested factories working at full capacity. Military movements were happening on every continent. They're actually preparing to fight, his intelligence officer said with disbelief. They are building weapons, training soldiers. They know they cannot win, but they are doing it anyway. Torvik stared at the planet below. In his 40 conquests, he had never seen anything like this. Other species had fought, yes, but only briefly. Only until they understood the hopelessness of their situation. Then they surrendered. These humans showed no sign of surrendering. They showed no sign of even considering surrender. They are not logical, Torvik said slowly. Admiral, they are not. Torvik thought about this for a long time. Then he shook his head and dismissed his concerns. Logic or no logic. Numbers were numbers. He had 12,000 ships. They had a few hundred. He had weapons that could destroy cities. They had primitive missiles and bullets. There was no way they could win. But somewhere deep in his mind, that small seed of doubt had grown a little larger, and he found himself wondering, for the first time in decades, if he had made a mistake coming here, below on Earth. 8 billion humans watched the alien fleet and felt their fear slowly transform into something else. Something older. Something that had kept their ancestors alive through ice ages, plagues, and countless wars. It was not hope. Hope was for people who believed things might get better. This was fury. Pure, ancient, human fury. And they were ready to use it. The invasion began at dawn. 10,000 dropships fell from the alien, fleet like metal rain. They descended toward every major city on Earth, carrying millions of Vulcan soldiers. Each soldier was trained from birth for combat. Each soldier had fought in at least 5 planetary conquests. They were the elite of the galaxy, the undefeated army of an undefeated empire. They expected to find panicked civilians running through the streets. They expected weak resistance from primitive military forces. They expected this conquest to be finished within days. They were wrong. Sergeant Lee Ji-woo crouched in the ruins of a collapsed building in Tokyo. Beside her were 40 fighters. Some soldiers and some civilians who had never fired a weapon until yesterday. She had spent the last 12 hours teaching them how to shoot, how to hide, and how to kill. Now it was time to see if they had learned. Remember what I told you? She whispered as the first dropship landed 200 meters away. They expect us to run. We do not run. Wait. We let them come close. Then we hit them hard, and we keep hitting until they stop moving. The dropship doors opened. Vulcan soldiers poured out, tall gray figures in black armor, carrying weapons that glowed with strange energy. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never met anything that could hurt them. Ji-woo raised her hand. Her fighters raised their weapons. Modified rifles, homemade explosives, and one precious shoulder-mounted railgun that a genius engineer in Dejin had designed 3 days ago. The Vulcan soldiers walked toward the ruined buildings, scanning for life signs. Their equipment showed humans nearby, but they were not concerned. Humans were weak. Humans always surrendered when they saw the might of the Empire. Gi-woo dropped her hand. The first shot from the railgun punched through 3 Vulcan soldiers before they even knew they were under attack. Then the rifles opened fire, their bullets modified to penetrate alien armor. Explosives detonated beneath the dropship, tearing it apart in a ball of flame. In 3 seconds, 20 Vulcan soldiers were dead. In 4 seconds, 30 more joined them. By the time the survivors organized a response, Jiwoo and her team had vanished into the ruins, already moving to their next position. This scene repeated itself across the planet, in Seoul. Defenders ambushed a landing force in the streets of Gangnam. In New York, fighters attacked from the subway tunnels. In Moscow, snipers picked off soldiers from rooftops. In Cairo, explosives buried in the sand destroyed dropships before they could even open their doors. The Vulcan had never experienced anything like this. Admiral Torvik stood on his bridge, watching casualty reports scroll across his screens. His gray face grew paler with each number. In the first hour of the invasion, he had lost 3,000 soldiers. In the second hour, 5,000 more. "This is impossible," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They are supposed to be primitive. They are supposed to be helpless." "Admiral," his ground commander reported from the surface, his voice shaking, "they are everywhere. They attack from buildings, from sewers, from forests. They use weapons we have never seen before. Our shields are not working against their new ammunition, and there are so many of them. Every time we kill one group, 2 more appear. Then use orbital bombardment," Torvik ordered. "Destroy the cities. Break their will to fight. Sir, that will kill millions of civilians. Do it." The bombardment began an hour later. Energy beams fell from the sky and turned buildings into dust. Entire neighborhoods vanished in seconds. Millions of humans died. Torvik watched with satisfaction. This was how you conquered a world. You showed them that resistance meant death. You broke them with overwhelming force, but the humans did not break. In the ruins of Tokyo, Jiwoo dug herself out of collapsed concrete and called her surviving fighters together. There were only 23 left, but none of them suggested surrender. "They destroyed our city," she said, blood running down her face from a cut on her forehead. "Now we destroy them. For every building they took, we take 10 of their soldiers. Move out." Across the planet, the same scene happened again and again. Cities burned and humans emerged from the flames angrier than before. The bombardment did not break their will. It sharpened it. Dr. Han Minji received authorization from General Yuna at noon on the second day of the invasion. Her virus was ready. She had hoped she would never have to use it, but the bombardment had killed her sister's entire family. "Release it," Yuna ordered. Minji activated the distribution system. Small drones flew across battlefields, releasing the virus into the air. It was invisible, odorless, and incredibly fast. The first Vulcan soldiers began dying within hours. They collapsed in the streets, their nervous systems shutting down one by one. Others fled back to their dropships, but the virus traveled with them. It spread through their ranks like fire through dry grass. Within 2 days, the ground invasion had lost 60% of its forces, not to human weapons, but to a disease they could not see or fight. Admiral Torvik received the news with something close to terror. He had never seen a species use biological weapons. It was considered dishonorable among the civilized races of the galaxy. But humans, it seemed, did not care about honor. They cared about winning. "They have created a plague that targets only us," his medical officer reported. "We have no defense against it. Admiral, we must retreat from the surface or we will lose everyone. If we retreat, we look weak," Torvik argued. "If we stay, we die." The retreat began that evening. Surviving Vulcan soldiers fled to their dropships and launched back to the fleet. They left behind thousands of dead and mountains of equipment that humans immediately began collecting and studying. But the humans were not finished. Captain Park Do-yan had spent 2 days preparing his small fleet for what he was about to do. It was a suicide mission. Everyone knew that. 200 small ships against 12,000 warships. The numbers made no sense, but Do-yan had learned something from listening to the alien communications. The big warships were not prepared for attacks. Their shields were configured against enemy fleets, not against tiny fighters that could slip between their formations. In their supply ships, the vessels that carried fuel and food and ammunition had almost no defenses at all. "We cannot destroy their fleet," Do-yan told his pilots before launch, "but we can hurt them. We can show them that the sky is not safe. We can make them afraid to stay here. Many of us will not come back. I will not order anyone to join me. This is volunteer only. Every single pilot volunteered. The attack began at midnight, Earth time. 200 small ships screamed up from the atmosphere and into the alien fleet. They moved too fast for the big warships to target. They slipped between formations and headed straight for the supply vessels. Duhain led the attack personally. His ship, the Baekdu, was first to fire. His modified missiles, designed by Taiho's team in Daejin, punched through the supply ship's shields and detonated inside. The explosion lit up the night. Sky over Earth. More explosions followed. One after another, supply ships died. The Valkon fleet scrambled to respond, but by the time they organized, human pilots had destroyed 43 vessels and were already diving back toward Earth. Not all of them made it. 8 pilots died in the retreat, their ships torn apart by alien weapons, but the rest escaped, landing on Earth as heroes. Admiral Torvik watched his fleet's supply situation collapse. Without those ships, he had enough fuel for only 2 more weeks. Enough food for 1 month? Enough ammunition for perhaps 1 more major bombardment? For the first time in his life, he considered the possibility of defeat. Below, on the ruined surface of Earth, humans looked up at the fires in the sky and smiled. They had drawn blood. They had hurt the invaders, and they were just getting started. General Yuna received the report of Doyan's success and allowed herself a small smile. It was the first time she had smiled since the invasion began. "Tell all forces," she ordered. "We can beat them. They are not gods. They are flesh and blood, and they can die. Keep fighting. Never stop. Make them regret the day they came to our world." The message spread across the planet. In bunkers and ruins, in forests and mountains, in every corner of every nation, humans heard the words and felt something change inside them. They had been afraid. Now they were hungry, and the Valkan were learning what it meant to be prey. The 4th day of the war began with something the Valkan had never experienced. In 10,000 years of conquest, rebellion. In their own ranks, on the flagship Eternal Conquest, Admiral Torvik faced a group of his senior officers who had gathered to deliver an ultimatum. Their faces were pale and their hands trembled, but their words were firm. "We have lost 60% of our ground forces," the senior tactical officer said. "Our supply ships are burning. Our soldiers are dying from a disease we cannot cure. Admiral, this conquest is failing. We must consider withdrawal." Torvik felt his blood boil. "Withdrawal? We are the Vulcan Empire. We do not withdraw. We do not lose. With respect, Admiral, we are losing right now. These humans are not like other species. They do not fight to survive. They fight to make us suffer. They smile when they kill us. Some of our soldiers have reported that humans sing songs while fighting. They are not afraid of death." Torvik slammed his fist against the command console. "Then we destroy them all. We burn this planet to ash. No survivors. No mercy. If we do that, we lose any value from this conquest. We came here for resources and slaves. Dead planets give us nothing." The argument continued for hours. In the end, Torvik agreed to one final attempt at ground invasion. One massive assault on Earth's remaining military centers. If that failed, they would consider other options. But while the Valkon debated, the humans prepared. Major Shinyunji had lost her husband on the 2nd day of the war. A Vulcan energy beam had destroyed their apartment building in Busan while she was leading a patrol 3 blocks away. She had seen the building collapse. She had heard the screams. She had felt something inside her heart turn cold and hard, like ice that would never melt. Now she commanded the largest resistance cell in Korea. 3,000 fighters who followed her without question. She had earned their loyalty through blood and fire. She never asked them to do anything she would not do herself. She had personally killed 47 Valkan soldiers, more than anyone else in her unit. "They are coming again," she told her fighters. Gathered in an underground shelter beneath the ruins of Busan, intelligence says this will be their biggest assault yet. They will hit Seoul, Tokyo, New York, London, and here. They want to crush us completely. One of her younger fighters, a boy of maybe 17, raised his hand. Major, can we win? Yoonji looked at the boy with something like tenderness. He reminded her of her nephew, who had also died when the building fell. I do not know if we can win, she said honestly, but I know we can make them pay. I know we can hurt them so badly that they never forget us. And I know that if we die free. That is worth something. The assault came the next morning. Val chips descended on 5 major cities simultaneously. This time, the alien soldiers wore better armor. They carried stronger weapons. They moved in tighter formations, having learned from their previous mistakes. But the humans had learned to end Seoul. General Yuna had prepared a trap. She let the Valkan land in the center of the city. She let them advance through the empty streets. They grew confident. They thought the humans had finally fled. Then she triggered the explosives. Thousands of bombs, buried beneath the streets over the past 3 days, detonated at once. The ground itself became a weapon. Buildings collapsed on Valkan formations. Fire erupted from sewer grates. The earth swallowed entire platoons. When the dust settled, half the Valkan assault force in Seoul was dead or wounded. The rest found themselves surrounded by human fighters who emerged from the rubble like ghosts in Tokyo. Sergeant Ji Woo led a charge that broke through the center of the Valkan formation. She had lost an eye in the previous battle, but she still fought at the front of her unit. A rifle in one hand and a sword in the other. The sword had belonged to her grandfather. She had promised herself she would never dishonor it. She screamed, "Give them nothing. Take everything." Her fighters followed her into the heart of the enemy. The fighting was brutal and close. Energy weapons and bullets flew through smoke and dust. Humans and Valkan died side by side, their blood mixing on the broken streets. But the humans kept coming. When one fell, 2 more took their place. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They fought until their weapons were empty. And then they fought with knives and fists and teeth. The Valkan had never seen anything like it. In Busan, Major Yoonji led a different kind of attack. While others held the front lines, she took a small team deep behind enemy lines. Her target was the Valkan field commander, a general named Vortak, who had ordered the bombardment that killed her husband. She found him in a temporary command post in a destroyed shopping mall. He was surrounded by 50 guards. He thought he was safe. Yoonji had brought only 6 fighters, but she had also brought something else. A bomb strapped to her chest, powerful enough to destroy everything within 200 meters. She called out, stepping into the open. The guards raised their weapons, but she held up her hand, showing them the trigger in her palm. "I am Major Shin Young-yi. Your ships killed my husband, my parents, my nephew. Today, you pay for them." Vortak stared at her with his 4 unblinking eyes. "You will die too, human." "Yes," Yoonji agreed. "But I will die knowing that I took you with me. That is enough." Her last transmission was broadcast on every Valkan frequency. "You cannot break what was already forged in fire. We were born fighting. We will die fighting. And we will take as many of you as we can." The explosion was visible from orbit. News of Vortak's death spread through the Valkan fleet like a disease. Their field commander, one of their most experienced generals, had been killed by a single human woman who was willing to die just to hurt them. "Admiral." Torvik felt his hands shake as he read the report. The humans were not fighting a war. They were fighting a crusade. They did not care about survival. They cared only about vengeance. "Admiral," his communications officer said nervously, "we are receiving transmissions from other species in this sector. They are asking about our progress. Tell them the conquest is proceeding as planned." "Sir, they can see our casualty reports. The whole galaxy is watching." Torvik felt something cold settle in his stomach. The Valkan Empire maintained its power through fear. Other species obeyed because they believed the Valkan could not be beaten. If word spread that a primitive species was successfully fighting back, Double quotes, how bad is it? He asked. We have lost 70% of our ground forces, sir. 12 supply ships have been destroyed. Our soldiers are refusing orders to descend to the surface. They say they would rather face court-martial than face the humans. Torvik closed his eyes. In 40 conquests, he had never lost a single ship. Now he had lost dozens. In 40 conquests, he had never had soldiers refuse orders. Now they would rather die by his hand than by human hands. Below, on the ruined planet, the battle continued. Humans died by the thousands, but they kept fighting. Every city became a fortress. Every street became a battlefield. Every civilian became a soldier. Lieutenant Choi Tai-ho, working without sleep in his underground lab, developed a new weapon, a small device that could disable Valkan armor. He broadcast the designs to the entire planet, and within hours, factories everywhere were producing them. Dr. Han Minji created a second virus, more deadly than the first. She called it Kim's Revenge, after a colleague who had died in the Seoul bombardment. It spread faster and killed quicker. Valkan soldiers began dying within minutes of exposure. Captain Park Dojin led to more raids against the alien fleet. He lost half his remaining pilots, but he destroyed another 30 ships. Each time he returned to Earth, more volunteers were waiting to join him. How do you keep going? One young pilot asked him. Do-yen thought of his grandmother, still waiting in Busan with a knife in her hand. He thought of his sister's children, who were hiding in a shelter somewhere in the countryside. He thought of every human who had ever lived and fought and died. We are human, he said simply. This is what we do. We fight. We survive. We win. It does not matter if it takes a day or a century. We never stop. On the 5th day of the war, the Valkan assault finally collapsed. Their soldiers fled back to their ships, leaving behind mountains of dead and dying. The humans let them go, too tired and wounded to pursue. But they had one. Not the war, not yet, but the battle. The invasion had failed. General Yuna stood in the ruins of her command center and looked up at the sky. The alien fleet was still there, but it was smaller now, weaker, hurt. This is not over, she told her staff. They will try again. Or they will bomb us from orbit until nothing is left. We must be ready. What do we do, General? Yuna smiled, and it was not a kind smile. It was the smile of a wolf that had tasted blood and wanted more. We take the fight to them. It is time to show them what happens when humans go on the offensive. The galaxy had been watching since the first day, when the Vulcan Armada arrived at Earth. 17 different civilizations detected it. They had all been conquered by the Empire at some point in their history. They had all knelt when the warships appeared. They had all surrendered when resistance seemed hopeless. Now, they watched with growing disbelief as a primitive species fought back. Ambassador Kalina of the Veth Confederation stared at the reports coming from Earth. Her people had surrendered to the Valkan 3,000 years ago. They had watched their homeworld burn. They had accepted slavery because they saw no other choice. They are fighting, she whispered to her council. They have no fleet. They have no shields. They have nothing, and they are still fighting. They will lose, another counselor said. The Valkan have never been defeated, perhaps Kalina replied. But they are losing soldiers. They are losing ships. They are bleeding. I have never seen the Valkan bleed before. Similar conversations happened across the galaxy. On 100 worlds, conquered species watched the war on Earth and felt something they had not felt in generations. Hope Admiral Torvik did not care about hope. He cared about survival, and his survival depended on ending this war quickly. Prepare the planet killer, he ordered his weapons officer. If we cannot conquer Earth, we will destroy it. The galaxy will see what happens to species that defy us. The planet killer was the ultimate Valkan weapon. A single shot could crack a world in half. It had been used only twice in the Empire's history, both times against species that had resisted too long. But as the weapon charged, something unexpected happened. Captain Park Doyon had been preparing for this moment. He had listened to alien communications. He had studied their fleet formations. He had identified the planet killer and guessed that Torvik would use it eventually. All ships, this is the bike due, Doyan transmitted to his remaining fleet. 47 ships, less than a quarter of what he had started with. The enemy is charging their main weapon. If it fires, Earth dies. We cannot let that happen. Captain, that weapon is on the flagship. It is the most heavily defended ship in their fleet. I know. That is why we are going to ram it. Silence on the communications channel. Then, one by one, the other captains responded, "We are with you, Diane. For Earth. For our families. Let's show these aliens how humans die." The attack began at dawn, Earth time. 47 small ships screamed out of the atmosphere on a direct course for the Valkan flagship. They did not try to dodge or evade. They flew in a straight line, engines at maximum burn. The Vulcan fleet opened fire. Ships exploded. Pilots died. But the survivors kept coming, closing the distance with every second. Torvik watched from his bridge with something close to horror. They are not attacking our weapon systems. They are not trying to disable us. They are trying to hit us directly. Sir, should we move the fleet? There is no time. Destroy them. But there were too many targets, and they were too fast, and they were too willing to die. 20 ships made it through the outer defenses. 15 reached the inner perimeter. 8 survived to the final approach. Doyan's ship was one of them. All ships target the bridge, he ordered. If we destroy their command center, the fleet will fall into chaos. It might be enough to save Earth. His weapons officer looked at him with tears in her eyes. Captain, it has been an honor. The honor is mine. Now let's make history. The Baekdu struck the flagship just as the planet killer reached full charge. The explosion tore through the alien vessel's hull, destroying the weapon and killing everyone on the bridge. Admiral Torvik died without even understanding what had happened. One moment he was preparing to destroy a world. The next moment, he was nothing. On Earth, General Yuna watched the explosion light up the sky. She fell to her knees, not from sorrow, but from relief. He did it, she whispered. Doyan, you beautiful fool. You did it. Without their admiral, without their flagship, without their planet killer, the Valkan fleet fell into chaos. Ships fired on each other by accident. Commanders gave conflicting orders. Panic spread through the ranks like wildfire. The surviving human ships pressed their attack. They were few, but the Valkan were confused, and confusion was deadly in battle. More alien ships died, then more. Then more. At midday, the first Valkan vessels began to retreat. They fled toward the edge of the solar system, abandoning their dead and wounded. Others followed. Within hours, the entire fleet was in full retreat. The invasion of Earth was over. The last transmission from the fleeing Valkan ships was intercepted by 17 different civilizations. It was a warning meant for the Empire, but heard by everyone. Do not go to Earth. Do not threaten Earth. The humans are awake now. They do not fight like other species. They do not surrender. They do not negotiate. They smile when they die, as long as they can take you with them. They were fighting each other for thousands of years before we arrived. They were practicing. They were preparing. They did not know what they were preparing for, but now they do. They have tasted blood and they want more. Stay away from Earth. Stay away from humans. They are not prey. They are predators, and they are coming for us. The message spread across the galaxy. On 100 conquered worlds, slaves heard the words and felt their hearts beat faster. Humans, they whispered to each other. The humans fought back. The humans won. On Earth, the surviving humans gathered to count their dead. The numbers were terrible. Millions had died. Cities were in ruins. The world would take decades to rebuild, but they had won. General Yuna stood before a crowd in the ashes of Seoul. Behind her, flag flew from a broken pole. It was not a Korean flag or an American flag or any national flag. It was something new, designed during the war. A simple image of Earth against a black background, surrounded by stars. Today, we remember our dead, she said, her voice carrying across the silent crowd. We remember the soldiers who gave their lives. We remember the civilians who became warriors. We remember Captain Park Do-yoon and Major Shin Yoon-ji and all the others who died so that we could live. She paused, looking up at the sky. The stars were visible now, no longer blocked by alien warships. But we also remember something else. We remember that we are human. We were born from struggle. We grew through war. We spent 10,000 years fighting each other, and we thought that was our curse. Now we know it was our gift. We were being prepared for this moment. Prepared to show the galaxy what we truly are. Her voice grew stronger, harder, fiercer. They thought we were weak because we were divided. But when the enemy came, we united. They thought we were primitive because we had no starships. But we built weapons that broke their shields. They thought we were cowardly because we were afraid. But our fear became fury, and our fury burned them. She raised her fist to the sky. Let the galaxy hear this. Let every conquered world hear this. Let every species that has ever knelt before the Valkan hear this. Humans do not kneel. Humans do not surrender. Humans fight, and humans win. The crowd roared. It was a sound that echoed around the planet. It's broadcast on every frequency to every corner of Earth. On 100 conquered worlds, that roar was heard. And on each of those worlds, something began to change. Slaves looked at their masters with new eyes. Workers began to whisper in secret. The seeds of rebellion, dormant for thousands of years, began to grow. The Valkan Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had shown the galaxy that they could be beaten. They had shown every conquered species that resistance was possible. They had awakened something that could not be put back to sleep. They had awakened humanity, and across the stars. A new word spread. A word that meant hope. A word that meant defiance. A word that made tyrants tremble and slaves dream of freedom. Human, in her command center. Yuna received a report from Lieutenant Taiho, who had survived the war and was now leading Earth's new space program. General, we have recovered significant alien technology from the crashed ships. We can build our own fleet. A real fleet. Within a year, maybe 2. Yuna smiled. Good, because we are not done. The Valkan will regroup. They will return. And when they do, we will be ready. And if they do not return. Yuna's smile grew sharper. More dangerous? Then we go to them. The galaxy has been ruled by fear for too long. It is time to introduce them to something new. What is that, General? She looked at the stars, thinking of all the worlds still enslaved, all the species still suffering, all the tyrants who thought they were safe. Justice, she said. Human justice. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Valkan Empire began to understand that they had not just lost a battle, they had awakened a storm, a human storm, and it was coming for them all.